There we go.
Good?
Yep.
It is 6 o'clock, so it is time to call this meeting to order. First order of business, say the pledge. Put the flag
Over here.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hannah, whenever you're ready.
John Brotherton.
Here.
Bodo Johnson.
Here.
Nikki Pettit.
Here.
Mitch Wilson.
Here.
Joe Robinson.
Here.
Tyler Wilson.
Here.
Andy Graham.
Here. Okay, item number 2 is approval of the agenda. Hopefully, everybody has had a chance to look over the agenda. I will say I would like to recommend removing items 10, 11, and 12 from tonight's agenda. We will bring them back at a later date. So I'll make that motion to approve tonight's agenda, removing items 10, 11, and 12. If I could have a second.
Second.
Mr. Graham with the first and Ms. Pettit with the second.
All right, thank you. John Brotherton.
Aye.
Bodo Johnson.
Aye.
Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Mitch Wilson.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
Andy Graham.
Aye. Okay, item number 3, public comments. We have 2 tonight. Moto?
Mr. Johnson.
I'll keep mine short and sweet. I actually have a ton of things to say, but I'm only going to ask about one thing. On policies, if there's a policy change, is there a procedure where all the parents and faculty all know the changes and follow the changes? Or do they go by a case-by-case scenario? Basically, there's a few parents that have been running into problems of different type of policies to where they're told one thing 1 minute, and then when they try to do it, depending on who they are, seems like the policy was changed. So I wanted to know if there's a policy that is being changed or changed, is that directly something that the superintendent and the other administrators, such as the principals of each school, changes on their own? Or does that have to be something that the board members have to approve or at least look at to see if it should be or shouldn't be changed? That's my question.
Thanks, Moto. Mr. Window?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I know everyone has the handout. I have several things I want to address. One being the MOU, and let me start by getting some numbers before I talk further about the MOU dated November 16th. In 2019, Northview had 289 students. Pleasant Acres had 387, Broad Meadow 293, and Eastlawn had 313. JW Ada had 537. 2019, we were 1,271 of 1,381. Eastlawn ranked 2025 out of 2101. Northview 1839. Pleasant Acres 1895. Broad Meadow 1946. And in 2019, we ranked 806 out of 814 schools in the state. With the MOU, that is being proposed for our staff, teachers. I've read this today off and on 5 times, trying to wrap my head around we are rewarding financially. We're rewarding financially as an evaluation. And what are we getting out of it? We're this low at the bottom. Board, community members, if a teacher's gonna leave, they're gonna leave anyway. Ain't a darn thing we're gonna do to stop them. $900 don't stop you from going anywhere. You're gonna leave anyway. You're gonna leave. So to entice, this, to me, this is enticing because nothing in here talks about the performance of anyone so we can get numbers like this up to where we need to be. And not only does it not address that, but what is being proposed to us for the districting, the redistricting, is not going to solve it. It's not going to solve it. These children, not kids, these children are all of our responsibility, and we owe them a good education. So if you think the $900 is gonna solve it, if you think the students over at Northview and East Lawn, if you're gonna keep switching around, you didn't switch around when Pleasant Acres was at 387 and Northview was at 289. That's 98 students more. That wasn't switched. Now we're switching again and again. The children are our responsibility. And when the children are our responsibility, it's the whole child, the whole child. That means that's that student themselves. That means it's their siblings. That means that it's their mother. That means it's their father. What happens with them? What happened with the parent? What inconvenience are we gonna place on the parents? What inconvenience is that gonna put on the parent? What is it gonna put on grandmama? What is it gonna put on a mom and them and everybody else? What inconvenience is that gonna put on them? We're trying to push something in, but we really haven't looked at this all the way through. If it's a study session, let's study it now. Let's try to fix what we have going on now. And then if we need to move to something else where it's gonna better the entire process, let's look at it then. But 21-22 will not do it, 22-23 will not do it, and 23-24 may do it, but it may not. But let's try to fix what's now. Because right now, we're throwing money at something. We're rewarding bad behavior. That's what we're rewarding. Not necessarily the teachers, but this is a potpourri of things that's going on. And I think we need to rethink this all the way through. It's just not the time yet. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, item number 4 is the consent agenda items. Everything on here is routine in nature. Does anybody want to read it tonight or? Okay. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda items, including personnel report as submitted with the stipulation that each individual is required to comply with requirements for new hires as indicated in Illinois statutes and RCS board policy and procedures, and including revocation of bills prepaid by the finance manager under board policy 4-50. Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Tyler Wilson with a second.
John Brotherton.
Aye.
Moto Johnson.
Aye.
Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Mitch Wilson.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
Andy Graham.
Aye. Need item 6.
Okay. Ready? All right, so, go ahead.
I was just following him.
All right, I didn't see where we were on that side. So we have 2 MOUs. An MOU is a memorandum of understanding involving our associations. Anytime when we are not in contract negotiations that we make a change related to payment to our employees or a change in working conditions, we are required to meet with the association and come to an agreement, which is what an MOU is. We have two associations. The association listed on the left is our educational support personnel staff, and the association on the right is the association that represents our certified staff, which is our teaching staff. Frankly, I find it offensive to think that increasing the compensation of our hardworking staff is not deserved, given what our employees have done during the last 2 years. It's offensive to suggest that they are not doing their best and working as hard as possible. The reason that we're going to the $950 bonus structure for the ESP Association is so that our employees will be approaching a living wage. They cannot work on $13 an hour and support a family. That's what we're aiming at here. And I would encourage anyone who thinks that $500 in additional salary to an employee or $950 in additional salary is not necessary to please come spend some time in our schools and in our classrooms.
Okay.
Now, the second item on the support staff is the registered behavior technician licensure. These are teaching assistants who are going through a special certification. And the recommendation is that when they are completed with that recommendation or that certification, that they would be paid an additional $1 per hour. Also, the association has come to us requesting that they be able to go to not 24 pay annualized pays, but that we go to, they requested a 19 pay period, but we made some adjustments that it needed to be a 20 pay period. And that is just for hourly employees who are not year round. The Teachers Association side, the issue with no evaluations 21-22 is again, this came into effect last year under the governor's emergency order that we need to, we can table the evaluations of our employees, specifically our teaching staff for this year. This does not mean that our teaching staff are not being observed and working with administration and coaches to improve instruction. It's just one thing we're able to take off the plates. That is a mandate that if I would say that there are better ways to assess the quality of a teacher than the evaluation process. And so if we're able to table it for 1 year, we think that's a good thing. It doesn't preclude us from non-renewing a teacher who is underperforming. That does not change that. So that's the two MOUs.
And I'll just start off on this, and I agree with you, Scott. What a teacher has been through, and Mitch can attest to this, what the teachers have been through the last 2 years, and even the teachers' aides in our buildings is crazy. And the evaluation period, I want to touch on that just real quick. Like Scott said, if you don't know what an evaluation is for a teacher, many of you that are teachers are here, there's a pre-planning meeting, there's pre-evaluation stuff, there's getting ready for the evaluation, there's post-evaluation stuff. So it takes a lot of time for the teacher and the administrator, but the teacher alone takes a lot of time when we're trying to get these kids, keep these kids in school, keep them in the classroom and going. So like Scott said, if a teacher is underperforming or not doing their job, the principal is going to identify those situations and correct them or move on. So I am in total support of both of these.
Scott, for the increased pay rate for technician, is that for mostly, have we talked about that being mostly for like custodians?
The $950 for that association.
No, the increased pay rate for registered.
The registered behavior technicians is, Allison, how many TAs are doing that right now?
There are 6.
Okay.
We have 6 teaching assistants who are doing it. And they mostly work in rooms with behavior concerns, self-contained special education.
Okay. I was thinking at one time we talked about custodians getting.
That is something we would like to do with the custodians.
If custodians get their plumbing license or
Yep.
electrical license or.
Yep, that will probably be something more.
Further down the road.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and just for the record, with both of our associations, it is a contract negotiation year, likely in the spring. So we've had more MOUs, I'd say, in the last 2 years than is normal, for sure. A lot of it's related to COVID. These, for the most part, these are not directly related to COVID. But we will be able, one thing we've talked about that Mitch is aware of is finding ways to compensate our non-certified employees based on skills that they have, specific skills. So in our maintenance department, the custodian gets a certification, say to be a plumber, is there a mechanism for us to provide additional compensation for that? And we don't have that in place yet, but that's essentially what this is, Mitch, but it's just for that. Yeah, they're having to go through a course. And I would say, I could probably explain it, but it's not just a course.
No, it's like 40 hours of online training and about 12 hours of in-person training.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I do. You're saying that you want to eliminate the evaluation this year?
This school year.
Now, in my opinion, I understand what you're trying to do there, and I agree with both sides. I agree with what Mr. Goldstein said, and I agree with what you're saying. Because one thing we're trying to do, at least I'm trying to do as a board member, is to make things better. And that's why I'm sitting here. But my problem with the evaluation thing is I think that there's some situations that we run into where a principal and or other administrators aren't going to see poor performance of a teacher because they're not there or they're not looking at it, looking for it. But we as parents see it. And what I mean by that is there's things that are not being done that some of these teachers are supposed to be doing that aren't doing it. Some of the things that we're supposed to be knowing as administrators and school people, they don't know it. But yet we're still gonna eliminate their evaluation, care less if they're good or bad, and reward them.
That's not what we're saying. We're saying if they're not doing things and the administrator in the building doesn't know, or if the administrator in the building knows and Scott doesn't know, then he needs to know.
What if it's being brought to your guys' attention and still nothing's being done?
I don't know of any issues I don't know of any issues, Moto.
So there's evaluation of a teacher is only related to their performance in the classroom. Typically, that's the vast majority of what is in the evaluation. It's not other things, which I think I know what you're talking about.
No, sir.
But it also not doing the evaluation this year, which we also did not do the evaluation last year, does not prevent the district from addressing an employee or non-renewing an employee. We do not have to evaluate a non-tenured teacher in order to non-renew a non-tenured teacher. So it is a little confusing.
No, I just wanted a better understanding of how things work
If you have
because
somebody that's not being a good employee, and not running a good.
I'm not trying to, let me rephrase this. I'm not trying to say anybody is a bad or good employee. I'm saying if we're, as a district, aren't doing what we're supposed to be doing to make sure that the teachers and other administrators don't know their job, then it's our responsibility to make sure they do. That's what I'm saying.
Are there any other questions or comments on this? If not, I'd like to make the motion to approve the 2 MOUs with the associations. If I could have a second.
I'll second.
Mr. Mitch Wilson with the second.
Andy Graham,
Aye.
Tyler Wilson,
Aye.
Joe Robinson,
Aye.
Mitch Wilson,
Aye.
Nikki Pettit,
Aye.
Moto Johnson,
Aye.
John Brotherton.
Aye.
Can I say something before we move on? Want to just piggybacking off of what you're saying. Being an educator, being in education myself, I'll tell you, we've, just at the high school level, we have kids like freshmen who haven't been in school since 7th grade, you know? And we've got some upperclassmen that haven't been in school since their freshman year. So I can't attest to the elementary school level, but still trying to get high school kids, you know, running an efficient classroom and trying to get them to figure out how to make it through a whole school day when they haven't had to worry about school for over a year. You know, we're sitting here in November, we still got kids that struggle to make it through a whole school day.
Exactly.
You know, so-
Mr. Wilson, what I'm trying to say
I know
is,
what you're saying, but
you're right.
Being an educator is not-
There's a bunch of teachers here and faculty members that I believe are doing the very best that they possibly can. Same thing that Mr. Wood said. I'm not trying to say that in any means. I know that it's hard, and I know that it's difficult, especially with the situations we ran into the last couple of years. All I'm saying on the evaluation part of it, that's why I voted aye on giving the money or the extra bonus or whatever you want to call it to the teachers and or the other people that work for the school system. I think in some ways, I think some of them do deserve more pay, a better raise or whatever. But when you're lumping everybody into one and you're saying we all deserve it, that is not true. But you're right. I'm not a teacher. I'm not someone that deals with kids all the time. Well, excuse me, I do.
you know what I spend a lot of my day doing? Pull your mask up, pull your mask up. Hey, you pull your mask up. You pull your mask up.
But you know, I feel for both sides. I honestly do.
Yeah.
But I believe in that a situation of being rewarded, I know that that's not a good word to use, should be based on what we're doing, where we're at, what we're trying to accomplish. We are at the bottom.
So I know you really want to go on to the next item. I agree 100% that when we have especially a teacher who is not meeting our expectations, that has to be addressed. And there's no one on the board, I believe, thinks otherwise. The reason the additional compensation is so much higher for the group on the left is those are our primarily underpaid, lower paid teaching assistants, custodians, cooks. That's the group that side is addressing, who are hourly employees. And our hourly employment salary schedule is very low right now. And there is a challenge, you know, when McDonald's and Walmart are posting for salaries that pay more than we do, that we've got to do something so that the original intent of both of those MOUs, well, there was a lot in each of them, but it started off as about how do we make ourselves more competitive for compensation at those lower level jobs, entry level jobs in the district. Secretaries would be the other group that are really low paid. So should we go on?
Thank you. Go on to number 7.
All right. This is why everyone's here, I think. I thought this would be the controversial item. So elementary school reorganization. So before I go on, I do want to say that, thank you. I know that's why, my guess is why most of the parents are here tonight, because I saw most of you last Thursday. So believe it or not, the intent here is that we're going through a process with the board where we are presenting ideas, presenting options, and having discussion about those. The board is not, this is not an action item in our agenda. This is a discussion item, okay? So that is the point. We're not voting to make some radical change to the school district tonight. So I tried to communicate that with anyone who would listen. We had, I got a lot of that from folks was, you're gonna do this all and we don't even know anything about it. So you're right. There's a lot more information we need to have. I think it was helpful for me to put those ideas out there and get feedback. 4 of our board members attended last Thursday when we had the parent community forum. So they were able to hear from the parents that were there. We had a packed house for our bilingual parent forum. That was the second round. And then the Zoom forum, the staff outnumbered the parents on that one, but we did have 3 meetings that did that. We did a survey. I saw some criticism that the survey window was not open long enough, but what I know about surveys is 90% of the people who are going to respond to that survey are going to do so in the first 24 hours. And that is what happened with our survey. So most people do it right away that are going to do it. So a lot of feedback and a lot of that to provide to the board. And the other thing the board is going to see tonight is that we're going to have more options than what we talked about before. And we're going to have different options to think through that are informed by the feedback that we've been getting. So review. These are the challenges and why me and the admin team are looking at, we've got some things we need to start to address, okay? And it was East Lawrence crowding. Well, meanwhile, we have vacant classrooms at Northview and Broadmeadow, the imbalance of class sizes, how we have support staff distributed across the district, and those would be our non-classroom teachers, our non-classroom staff. So just so everyone knows, classroom teacher staff, that's based on student enrollment. So East Lawn does have more teachers than the other schools because they have more classrooms of kids, but they don't have a proportional increase in support staff to go along with that. The bilingual programming, we talked about it. It's the real big issue there is that the majority of kids are in split classrooms. And then as a district, if we, I feel very strongly about this, is that one of the major ways for us to start to improve the district, which hopefully would be manifested in higher test scores, is that we have got to get our youngest students reading better than they are. And we have got to get resources to that level. So that's the 5 issues that we're considering. So last month, it's all one long day for me. So last month, option 1, make no changes. Option 2, reboundary the 4 schools to balance enrollment. And I think what you're gonna see tonight is what are the, there's a lot of different, I say the word permutations, a lot of different directions we could go with what reboundarying means, okay? There was not a lot of discussion of that within the forums. Option 3, this would be a pre-KK building, a bilingual building with monolingual. So this is a clarification since I've been doing the presentations. We've completely taken off the table the idea of a school that is only Spanish-speaking bilingual students. 2 buildings of monolingual, 4, which was grade level centers. So among the teachers and support staff in the buildings, we had a good representation from all of the elementaries. It was about 70% of our staff had make no changes or redraw the boundaries. Redraw the boundaries was by far, it was an easy majority. So it did carry if we were voting. This was informational. It was not a binding vote. I had to explain that to people too. We did have interest in the grade levels and hybrid model, but clearly, and I'll get into this a little more. So the family survey that was sent out, we had 91 responses. And I did want to put this up here because on the staff survey, the staff respondents were pretty evenly distributed across the 4 buildings, what I would expect to see. We did obviously hit more families. I want to say it's 68%. No, 58% were from Northview and Broadmeadow that responded. A really low response rate from East Lawn. So it does kind of call in the question of the validity of the results. However, this, again, you're going to see with the results that they're still overwhelmingly in one category. I did check to make sure we didn't have people making up fake emails and submitting the survey over and over and over. I didn't catch anybody. So, but I do have a way of checking for that. So, okay, so for parents and community members that would have responded, and I will say, I believe most everybody who responded is a parent based on the emails that how I was able to check on the emails. So again, really high percentages of make no changes or redraw the boundaries. Pretty low responses for some type of grade levels, okay? So general feedback. So this is me taking all of the comments, all of the forums, and trying to put it into one slide. Okay, so I'm not catching everything in this, but general feedback. So options 3 and 4 is what we're talking about. Disrupts existing school structures, and respondents generally want to stay where they are. That was the general response from family and staff. Eliminating of neighborhood schools was a concern. Respondents generally want to go to the school closest to home. So that's different than just continuing in the school where you are. Going to the one closest to home is a slightly different thing. Families that was a pretty overwhelming piece of feedback from families, was having kids in multiple schools at the elementary level. The staff version of that, I would say, was that staff were concerned about building long-term relationships with students and their families, and not having them in the same building over time would be a challenge for that. Another one, changes are happening too fast. Why is this happening all of a sudden? We need more stability after what we've gone through with COVID. So that was, again, some pretty consistent feedback on that. Busing, this was not a big feedback piece from staff, but it definitely was from parents. Busing, when is school going to start? When is it going to end? How am I going to get my child to and from school? Okay. So honestly, I think if you look back at the first time I did the slideshow, most of these were things that we said in October were probably going to be the challenges of making these changes. So that is what I feel like we're seeing. I will say, I don't think it's in the next slide, but what I want to say too is within the bilingual parent meeting, a piece that came out was the bilingual parents, and again, speaking very generally, they are in favor of consolidating into one program because they get the efficiency of it and not having their kids in split classes. However, none of them really want to move schools. So it creates a bit of a problem, right? So they like being at Pleasant Acres or at East Lawn, but they also see the benefit of being together in terms of not having those split classes anymore. So I do want to explain busing. Okay, so follow my graphics, everyone. This is as high tech as I get. I should have called the village. They have that program. So let's say you live here. Okay, you can't see what I'm pointing at. Let's say you live here. I put a nice friendly house there, okay? In this model, regardless of where the boundaries are, okay, your child can walk to East Lawn. They're less than 1.5 miles to East Lawn. They're less than 1.5 miles to Northview. So in this model, if that's where you live, regardless of which school your child attends, your child would walk to that school, or you would drop them off at that school, okay? Now your child gets on, if they don't get, let's say they go to Northview, then now they get on a bus that goes on a circuit to Broadmeadow, to Pleasant Acres, to East Lawn, and then back to Northview. Hopefully they get off before they get all the way back to Northview. But essentially what you're doing is you've got to get to the home base and then you get around town that way. So I refer to it at one of the meetings as a shuttle system, and people got confused because I didn't make the connection to C-carts in town and having it called a shuttle. No, I'm just meaning like a bus that would drive around between the schools, okay? This is just an example. And so now let's say you're out in South Point. So these families are already all bused to Broadmeadow. So now my child will have to walk to the bus stop, hop on the bus that goes to Broadmeadow and connect now with the shuttle bus. My graphics do not get any more high-tech than this. Now let's say you live in Gulfview. All the folks that live in Gulfview can walk to Pleasant Acres. So what could happen is you walk to Pleasant Acres, you get how this is going to work, I think now. Then the shuttle goes. And this is not one bus happening. Okay? So in theory, here's all, where are you? Oh, there's the East Lawn kid. They just get to walk to school there and ride the bus around town. But now in theory, you've got all of these neighborhoods at once. And then for all of these neighborhoods, they've got to get to the school and then the bus circuit starts. Okay, so it's not like East Lawn, you have to get your kid to East Lawn at 7:30, but you have to get your kid to Broadmeadow at 7:50. Got to get it would be the same time theoretically. Don't quote me on this because there would be a lot of busing details to hammer out. And then the buses start to move. So there's 4 buses, maybe there's more than 4 buses even. But there's at least 1 bus at each school that then hits the circuit and they all go at the same time. Okay, so that's kind of how the busing would work. And then after school, it would be the reverse. Okay, and so there's a circuit that would get your child to school. Would it be perfect? No, but those of you with kids in the schools right now knows that it's not perfect now. Okay. The other thing that I see as a potential option, if we were to go to something like this, is the possibility of busing more kids. One of the challenges we have is it's a pretty far walk for some of our kids and they don't get busing. In this model, really, if you can get to any school, you can probably get on the bus and shuttle around, is what we would do. No matter what, kids who are out here in South Point, and there might be some other places, but there would still be some regular bus stops that would have to happen. We also would have to look at pre-kindergarten is already bused 100%. Well, they don't all use the bus, but they can all use a bus, and it's door-to-door busing. If we had an early childhood building that was pre-K, we could look at extending that bus service to kindergarten, which I know for the #1 bus calls I get are from kindergarten parents, okay? Because a mile and 1.49 miles is forever for a kindergartner to walk. And I understand not wanting to have my kindergartner walk that far. So this could give us some options for getting more of those, especially little kids, into transportation. All right. I also got a lot of questions about bilingual programming. Well, transportation, should we pause? Does that make sense, what I'm kind of showing?
Yes.
All right.
I had a question. Are there,
Go ahead, Joe.
are there any similar models with transportation being used in other small towns that are about the same size as us?
Yes.
And I guess what is the feedback that, you're getting, or have you had a chance to find out about how the other towns think about it?
So that's a piece we would, I think, so I'm not sure if I heard Joe, but how does it work in other towns and what's the feedback there? So I think if option 4 is something that the district wants to pursue more seriously, that's a piece we would have to start to investigate in greater detail. It does work. So there are a group of schools that last fall I presented to the district as comparable school districts. So these are downstate K-8 districts with at least 1,000 students. And has racial and linguistic diversity, okay? So, so we're about the same size school district as Monticello, but we're not really that comparable to Monticello, okay? But our comparable districts are, I shared last year, Streeter Elementary School District, East Moline School District, Bell Valley, which is down Metro East St. Louis, Carbondale Elementary School District, and Mount Vernon Elementary School District. So East Moline is the only district in there that's bigger than us, and they use a system similar to what we currently have. The other 4 districts are all on grade level centers. So I think I said this in one of the presentations, we're right in that size range where it makes sense from an efficiency point of view. A district like East Moline isn't doing it, probably because they're also geographically a lot larger than we are. I'm from Moline, so I have this weird point of reference on that one. They've got about 1,000 more kids than we do. So other districts that do it, when you get into larger districts, there's models of it. And not exactly what we're talking about, but Kankakee has some grade level centers. They have some K-8 schools and then some grade level schools. Peoria has some grade level centers. Mount Zion, Mahomet, and Monticello. Again, I don't know the last three are comparables in that pool, but districts about our size that are K-8, this is the point where it makes sense potentially. So. But yeah, I don't know what parents, I mean, I know, I would have to find out how it works specifically, yeah. I've only ever had casual conversations, so, yes.
What happens when kids get off at the wrong school?
Yeah, that's gonna happen. Yeah, so, and I would just
I've
say.
had firsthand experience with that.
Right now, they get off at the wrong bus stops already, so it's something, I'm looking into some, no matter what we do, we might, there's some technology we might be able to add that will help us. You know, we can all track our kids with something probably. That might do the trick, but doesn't the high school do something where they like
Scan their IDs.
scan their IDs when they get on the bus?
Yeah.
Yeah. But not when they get off the bus. That's probably the piece we need. I mean, unfortunately, it's not uncommon that kids don't get on their bus. And then kids get off at the wrong stops. And so that's going to be a problem for us, I think, no matter what.
And if I'm a parent that picks my kids up from school, now I might have to sit in a long line at Northview and then drive over to Pleasant Acres and sit in another long line to pick up my other kid there. Instead of just waiting in one long line and picking both of them up at the same time.
Right, and so that could be a problem. I think if you go back to this, what it might look like is, you go to, let's say, East Lawn, because one of your kids goes to East Lawn, and that's where you're gonna do pickup, and you wait for the bus to get there with the other child. So I don't think it's probably practical to, especially our parents that have 3 kids and more, to run the circuit with any kind of efficiency. It takes a long time right now to pick up a kid from our schools. Yeah, that would be a good thing. I agree.
So am I understanding you correctly that when you said the parent waits there, say you're at East Lawn and your other child's at Northview, you just have to wait at East Lawn for the circuit to go through until. Okay.
That's one thing.
I don't think.
Ideally, it would be all the parents go to their home school, wherever their home school would be, and pick up their kids. That would be the ideal situation, but you have some parents that wouldn't do that. Some parents that would want to be there firsthand to get their kid as they walk out the door and then go. So, I mean, you would have some parents that would want to do that, but ideally for it to work the best is that you would go to the home school and wait for your kids to get there. No matter if, let's say if you went to Northview, because in your situation, your kids would walk to Northview, but they might go to school at Broad Meadow and East Lawn. Well, they get on the circuit, go to Broad Meadow, East Lawn, but you would go to Northview and wait for them to get off the bus when they got to Northview to walk home with them.
So yes, it does sound very complicated.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Oh, that actually sounds more
Okay. It make more sense that way.
Yes.
Okay, I'll let him
Instead of, no.
I'm teasing.
Well, I guess, I don't know, I guess it just not clicked when,
Yeah.
whatever he said. But, that sounds more feasible than going to Northview waiting, and then going to East Lawn waiting. That doesn't sound fun.
And I did present this last month, but this might be in here if I go back.
What do you mean by homeschool? Sorry.
Neighborhood school.
Yeah.
What did he say?
Neighborhood school.
So like, I live by Northview. So
Whatever school you
Northview
live
would be
closest to.
my home school.
That's your homeschool.
Where you pick your kids up at.
I don't have it.
But you may not take them up there next time.
What's that?
You may not take them up if they're gonna be doing that.
We're discussing that. Let us have our discussion.
We're just trying to, you're throwing things out there we haven't heard.
We're trying to get.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you meant neighborhood school.
Yeah.
And so it's whatever school you live closest to could be where you pick up all your kids.
Okay.
All right. So I wanted to make sure parents knew, like, there's a method behind what would happen with
It takes
transportation.
45 minutes.
Bilingual programming got a lot of feedback. I will say that the feedback, the concerned feedback was, from what I could tell, entirely from our English-only families. But the concern among some that housing bilingual students in one building is not okay. So it would not be okay if it was a school solely of students who are bilingual. And that was an option that I presented last month, and that option has been removed. Currently, 77% of our bilingual students are already at East Lawn. 23% of our bilingual students are already at Pleasant Acres. So what I was looking at with option 3 was, is there a way, and that's less than 200 kids, is there a way to get all of those kids into one building? Another thing I tried to point out when people ask is, being bilingual is not the same as being Hispanic or being a Latino. Those are different things. There's a big overlap in Rantoul because most of our bilingual students identify as Hispanic or Latino, okay? However, point 3 on here is, all 4 of our elementary schools right now have English language learners in the schools, and all 4 of our schools have Hispanic students in them. That would likely continue, okay, under any of our options. It's probably going to happen. Bilingual programming is all about students' language proficiency. So that's based on an assessment. They test into it, and then eventually they test out of it and are no longer in the bilingual program. They're still probably Hispanic students, no matter how we slice it in our community. We do, even our second largest language in our district is still those students would identify Hispanic or Latino, and it's a Central American language. Chu, I think is what it is. I probably have the wrong one in my head. Confobal, Chu, one of those two. So I did want to make sure that we're not trying to do something that would be de facto segregation based on students' race. It is about providing programming, and we would want to still continue a program with English language learner or English speaking students in the same place. Another comment came up a lot was the benefits of having all of your students enrolled in grades K through 5 in one building. I think that is great. If that's what our kids experienced and they go into one school in kindergarten and come out of that same school in 5th grade, that's great. When I look at our current 5th graders though, only 28.9% of our current 5th graders have been continuously enrolled in the same school. Okay, that's an effect of our mobility in our student population. So very few kids, 1 out of whatever that is, 30% of the kids in 5th grade did not start there in kindergarten. So the K-5 model works in theory as the best model when kids are in a more stable enrollment situation. Now, about 50% of our 5th graders are enrolled in our district from grade K through 5, but they're transitioning in and out of the different schools in our district. I'm not accounting for, this came up in some of the comments, we do have kids that will move out of the district and then move back into the same school they just went to. So yeah, there's some of that. That's not as easy to account for. If we did something that was more of a grade level center, or they were larger elementary schools, which is also an option, is we would potentially be able to keep more students continuously enrolled in their cohort group. Okay, so are there other options? All right. I'm ready to go. Other options. So after hearing the feedback, I thought it would probably be beneficial to bring, what are other ideas that are out there? Because I have said multiple times that all of these options could be broken down into different options. There's lots of ways we could look at it. So another option might be redraw the boundaries to balance enrollment, but cap enrollment in each school by grade level. So that once that enrollment cap is met, new enrollments would be bused, or depending on where they live, they could walk to the school with grade level space. So once a classroom in a school hits its capacity, could we cap that and then move those kids those are typically students that are going to be enrolling late, is who that would be. Another option might be to not redraw boundaries, but cap enrollment in each school by grade level. Once that enrollment cap is met, new enrollments would be moved to a space with a place with grade level space. I would also throw onto that one is that if that doesn't significantly change the enrollment at East Lawn, that we would need to consider mobile classrooms and still would need to consider increasing support staff for that building. Okay. Another option is eliminate petitioning. I've gotten the question many times as to how is it, 2 years ago, there were this many kids in this school and now we have this many kids in this school. Well, there are you'll see it in some numbers here, but the amount of petitioning that happens in our district is a partial cause of the problem. So eliminate petitioning. And what petitioning is we have parents who will ask to go to a school that's not their neighborhood school. Those have been approved over the years. Some are approved, some are denied. There's lots of variables that go into that. But typically, once you're petitioned in, you stay. And so we have a lot of kids who are in schools that's not their neighborhood school. And then there's various combinations of other options. So here's another option. This with some specific numbers. These are really tentative numbers. So what if we would shift the students who are homeschool, their neighborhood school is Northview, but they're bilingual, so they attend East Lawn right now. Okay. And I was shocked to see we have about 15 kids who attend East Lawn right now whose neighborhood school is Pleasant Acres, but they petitioned to go there. So what if we moved those kids? And this is what our numbers would look like potentially. Okay. It would reduce quite a bit the numbers of students at East Lawn, and it would increase the numbers slightly at Broadmeadow, Northview, and Pleasant Acres. So take that same idea and extend it a little more. So what's the difference here? Now, what if we take all the kids who are currently at East Lawn, who their neighborhood school is Broadmeadow or Northview, and remove the petitioning that's happening from all the schools into East Lawn. And now you can see the numbers get even more balanced. Okay. And then the last one, I feel like I just said this for the last one, but these are all just variations of shifting the bilingual enrollment population and tweaking the petitioning policy to move kids back into their neighborhood schools. So there's a way to get the numbers pretty darn close. What I haven't looked at is what grade levels are those kids in, because that would make a difference in terms of class sizes. So I just threw a lot of stuff out there, but there are other things we can look at that would start to address the challenges. So next steps, other than we're going to talk about it right now, is I would continue to get feedback from community, families, and staff. We would continue our discussion at the next board meeting. And the earliest we would take any kind of action would be the December meeting. And I want to make sure I'm clear that any option, let's say the board took action in December, any option would really be directing the district to do more detailed planning. Okay. The board could also choose to not take action in December, and we can continue to meet and discuss it until you're ready to make a decision. I am done talking.
Thank you, Scott.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody want to start?
I have a question. Going back to number 3, is it still the same setup as when you had the meeting last week, where it would be, one of the options, wasn't it, like if you had, say you had 175 bilingual kids and you wanted to also incorporate 90 monolingual kids? Is that still one of the options?
That is option 3.
Okay, so then how would you pick the 90 monolingual?
Good question. So my initial thought is that it would be through boundaries initially, like to start, is it would be a specific neighborhood or the, in theory, it's the kids who live closest to East Lawn, who aren't Spanish speakers. If we evolved into a true dual language program, most likely it would be by application into the school. So, but we can't start all the grades as a dual language program in year 1. So we could start next year, for instance, we could start a dual language strand. When I say strand, that just means another classroom, okay? We could start a dual language strand in kindergarten and maybe even first grade. And then each year you add another. So it would be a transition within a transition to do it.
So if, say you have older kids than that, then your kids wouldn't benefit from it.
Nope. It would be very hard to start a child in a dual language program after about I would say first grade. They're little sponges when they're kindergarten. So, because what happens in a true dual language program is the instruction in the classroom would be, at kindergarten, would be 90% in Spanish. And that might mean you're an English-speaking child, and you're in there in a 90% Spanish immersion world, okay? Well, fortunately, kindergartners do really well with this because their brains are just designed to learn language and do it. So we couldn't do that same thing with a 5th grader. It just doesn't work that way. And also by the time we're in 5th grade, the model is 50-50. So half the days in English, half the days in Spanish. So you gradually release to where it's a truly bilingual school setting for those kids. And then at junior high, what we would likely do is not much different from what we're doing, and also that this is 7 years from now at the earliest. So by the time those kindergartners are in 6th grade, is we would offer some courses in Spanish that an English-only child who came up through the program could take it. So right now, the only Spanish language class we offer at Ader is language arts in Spanish. So, but right now, that's only the kids who are in the bilingual program who do it.
Well, I would like to thank the staff that put on the informational hearings. I'd like to thank the parents that have called and reached out to us and filled out the survey. I've heard from several of them. We are listening, and I think all of our jobs as board members is to do what's best for the kids and to try to move our school district up. I think that's what we all want here, whether we're a parent, staff member, board member, community member. We want our schools to be successful. We may not all agree on how to get there, and that's okay. But we're putting in the work right now, so we need to continue to listen, continue to do your own research. Look around, call some of the school districts that Scott has referenced. I know I've started reaching out to people I know in those areas. I've reached out to other communities that do grade level centers to try to pick their brains on what is good and what is bad on those things. So keep reaching out and we'll, one thing I want you guys to know is board members, teacher shortage is not gonna get better. Substitute shortage is not gonna get better. So when we're making decisions, we need to have those in mind. If there's a plan that we can have less staff needed for our district, less substitute needed for our district, those are plans that we need to look at thoroughly. Because I talked to a Board of Education member for the Eastern Illinois College of Education. Their enrollment's down drastically. Drastically. When I said they used to have 500-600 kids in their program, and they're down to less than 200. So, and those are the types of teachers that we're getting. We're getting kids from Eastern and Illinois State and the University of Illinois. So when a local college is down by that much, that's gonna hurt us in the future. So we need to look at everything that we can to make sure that we can staff our schools appropriately and keep our kids getting the quality education they deserve.
Do we have an answer or know why? Or has anybody contacted those parents from Pleasant Acres that have petitioned to go to East Lawn on why this is taking place?
No, because I just saw it today.
Okay.
So that's how, and again, I know you know this, but so everyone in the room knows. So as we start to look at other ideas, we start to look at the information differently. And when I was simply asking, how many kids from Broadmeadow and Northview are in the bilingual program? And then I see the list and I'm like, why are all these kids from Pleasant Acres at East Lawn? So I don't know why. Because they're not all there for some of them are there for the bilingual program, which again, I don't understand how that happened. And, or I don't remember. And then the other one is, why would they be petitioning, which is what you're asking. I don't know why. So, but a lot of the petitioners appear to be, I know it's kind of a dated term, but grandfathered in, where they were petitioned in maybe in kindergarten or first grade and they've just stayed there and that's their school. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, anybody else have?
But those are things I'm working on planning.
Scott, can you go back to the other option slide? When it talks about cap.
Yes.
So who gets the first slot? And then say classroom's 20 kids. Who gets, and then do we throw a lottery? Do we put names in a hat? How do you envision that? You know, who gets, for the homeschool, like Nikki's is Northview, mine is East Lawn.
It would be, every spring, the district sends out notices to register. For the parents who would register their kids on time and get things done and get everything done like they're supposed to. We'd have to have a public service announcement. We'd have to offer some evenings. You know, that way the staff can plan during the summer months. It'd be the ones that come in the middle of summer or just fail to register altogether, that they might not get their homeschool.
Yeah, my thinking is, you know, so I don't even know how often it would need to happen. So if I look at all of our kindergarten classes, I knew this number earlier today, 5 of the kindergarten classes are open. So when I look at how far over they are, we're probably talking about moving less than 5 kids overall. So it would most likely affect kids who start after the school year has started, or they never registered on time. That could be the other thing. So it's, in my head, it's like if that's your home school and you register on time, your neighborhood school, and you should be able to expect that you'll have a seat there. But where we start the school year very rarely with a class that's full, it starts to happen after moving. So we can project from the year before what we think enrollment is going to be, and we're usually pretty spot on. So the challenge is, you know, it's just hard when Broadmeadow has 21 and 22 in a kindergarten class and another school has 14 and 15, right? So we're paying an overload stipend to 2 teachers at Broadmeadow who have this large class. These large classes, meanwhile, we have classrooms in the district that are full, so. I think there'd be some upset people when you get down to it too. If, you know, but it would also only be a year-to-year thing. I experienced this at this point in my life, it is probably about 20 years ago in a suburban district where I worked, where there was so much new housing growth in a neighborhood that they capped the enrollment. And that anyone who was moving in once the school year started had to go to another school. And so there are ways to do it through policy. It's something definitely the Teachers Association has brought up before as a way to balance the enrollment. So there would have to be some kind of fair and transparent way of doing it. That's probably the most important thing. And we still might have a situation where if everybody registers and they register on time, and then we might still be over in this classroom, but I don't think it will happen.
Can I piggyback off?
Sure.
I don't know if I'm asking the same question, but say I go to register my son at Northview and it's full. Do I get to pick? Or do you guys?
When are you registering your son for Northview?
Late.
Yeah, you might not have a choice.
So if I register him kind of late and it's still full?
But you're late.
I know, but what I'm saying is.
Don't be late.
For this, I really won't be. For this kind of stuff, I am pretty on time with, but kind of sort of. Anyway, but does the parent get to pick the overflow school? Or does the district get to pick the overflow school? If there's two other schools that have class sizes that aren't full or close to capacity, does the parent get to pick? Or does the school district get to pick?
What I think the best answer probably is that we have some clearly defined rules for how that would work. So that we're being consistent. So, because in my head, I'm like, yeah, you should have a choice if we can give you the choice. But I also know there's all these other variables going on in my head, like maybe the class at Northview has 15, but they've got that kid, okay? So we don't want to have that class get too big. I also know that principals will really look at the strengths of teachers and which teachers might be able to handle a slightly larger class size better. But to me, it makes sense that we would say, okay, so you come in, it's kindergarten, we don't have any seats at Broadmeadow, but we have seats at Pleasant Acres and Northview. Which one do you want to go to? I think that's what you want to know. So if we do that, I think it just has to be consistent.
So that hasn't been ironed out.
No.
My last thing, has this come up in discussion where me as a parent, I really appreciated how the K-5 teachers kind of work together with each other, whereas I had a kindergartner who read at a first grade level, and so every once in a while she would go to the first grade classroom for reading and read with a group of kids there. And if we start separating those now, I mean, you might have, like a fifth grader who might be reading at a third grade level, but he can't work back and forth with classrooms and other teachers like that. If we go away from the K-5 model, has that come up in discussion at all?
Yes. Definitely from teachers.
Okay, well, you guys keep doing your homework, start doing some research on other communities that are comparable to us, and keep listening, and keep on the lookout, and parents, family, community members, all our faces, emails on the website. Please continue to talk to us.
Don't have all your faces up there. We gotta get, every month that goes by, I'm like, I can't believe we don't have their pictures.
Okay, but we're on the website. If you send an email to one of us, it comes to all of us. So please keep talking to us, and we'll keep listening and keep working through this.
All right. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I moved on.
Yeah, go ahead.
She did?
I did.
We're good.
All right. It was brought to my attention that we really should be doing more regular updates regarding the social equity working group that happened last year and is continuing this year. Nikki is still involved with the social equity working group, so she can keep me honest tonight on this one. So unlike last year, I am not chairing it. Last year it was Regina Kreider and I who chaired it. This year it is Lavette Harmon, DeAndre Henderson, and Patricia Valente, who are helping to chair it. And I think I'm grateful that it's 3 people this year because they've really split into these subgroups and are trying to do more detailed work. They do meet monthly. There are 5 subgroups within the social equity working group. And district admin are also participating in twice monthly professional development. That's been happening all first semester. It's every other Thursday. It's all of the district admin. And what we're trying to learn is, how do we have these conversations around equity with our teachers and with our support staff so that we're able to start beginning on January 3rd at the Institute Day, which will be our district-wide equity professional development kickoff. I do want to throw out there that Nikki came to the admin meeting last Thursday. We had a guest speaker from the U of I there. The other thing is last year, the Social Equity Working Group started in the recommendations made to the board. There were certain things that should be happening. So far this year, we've established a literacy subcommittee, a defined learning cohort, which is with the goal from the academic group last year was around project-based learning, and that's what they're working on. We had our first personnel committee meeting, but there's a district, and Mr. Brotherton was here for that one. There's a district personnel committee, and then there's a social equity working group personnel committee that's doing some more of the detailed work on that. I did put the calendar in the packet for the board members to see, but we have a lot. It's taken me a while to get them all in one place, all the different committees and groups that are happening in the district. So if you have a moment and you can kind of check out all of the different things that are going on, a lot of them are tied into what we're trying to do with the social equity working group. So I just wanted to share an update, and probably that's going to become a monthly thing to update you on what they're getting done.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Now for the other controversial topic of the night. So discussion of the tentative tax levy, and Marcellus and I are going to do this. I'm going to do the beginning and he's going to do the numbers work. So what is the tax levy? All right, so I'm going to do a little education for everyone in the room, and we have 3 village trustees in the room on accident tonight. So I know they're aware of what a tax levy is also. So, okay, so the levy is the formal request that we do as a taxing body to request local property tax funds. Okay. So that's what it means. So every year we have to do a levy, which is us as a government saying, this is how much we need in property taxes to do what we need to do, okay? So in 2019, RCS's budget was only 21% from local property taxes. So I know that when you get your property tax bill in Rantoul, and we're always on top. The school district is, Rantoul City Schools, RTHS is number 2, is you think that it's all that local property tax dollars is funding everything that we do. It is 21%. We are a district that gets a significant portion of our funding from state and federal grants. Okay. On average in Illinois, districts get 60.6% of their budgets from local property taxes. RCS does not get a lot of money from local property taxes, okay? 21% is local property taxes. The other local source of revenue for us is the sales tax, which is a countywide revenue that we get, which throw that in, I think it's another 6% maybe. I do have little notes on here just for comparison. I don't do this very often to compare us directly to RTHS because they're a high school district, that's a whole nother animal, okay? But just so you know that in that same year, where 21% of our budget was from local property taxes, RTHS was getting 45.5% of its budget from local property taxes. So why Okay, I'm gonna explain that in a minute. Local property tax, however, why is local property tax important for a school district? Well, really for any taxing body, it is a very stable source of revenue for a school district, for any taxing body. Property, houses are there from year to year. People pay their property taxes year to year. It's not subject to fluctuations like a 1% sales tax is. It's not subject to the whims of the governor on whether we get state reimbursement or who's in office in Washington, D.C. as to whether federal grants are being funded. All right, local property tax money is it's almost our only guaranteed revenue from year to year. It is our most valuable revenue that we get. So why is our percentage in Rantoul City Schools of property tax, local property taxes so low? Okay, well, we have a very low EAV per pupil. So what's EAV? EAV is the equalized assessed value. So what this means is it's the total value of real property divided by 1/3. So if your house is worth $150,000, okay, the EAV of your house is 50,000. So that's 150,000 divided by 3. I just did this math homework with my daughter last night. Okay, it's coming back to me right now. I might have yelled at one point. But that's what your EAV is, okay? EAV per pupil is the amount of property wealth in all of Rantoul City Schools school district divided by the number of students we have, okay? So our EAV over time. So right now, the estimated EAV for this year, I think I've got the right number here, is, no, that's not the right number, but in 2020, 22 is what we're gonna talk about in a minute. In 2020, our EAV was $124 million. So all of the property in Rantoul City Schools District, the total value of that property is $124 million times 3, okay? So that's the EAV, but look at how it evolves over the years. 2016, it was 97.3 million. 2017, 97.9 million. 2018, went down, 97.6 million. 2019, 101 million. We're starting to see some property growth. 2020, what happened? It went from 101 million to 124 million, okay? To give you a comparison also why RTHS looks different is RTHS's total EAV for Rantoul Township High School District, which is a lot bigger than RCS, is $217 million. So that's all, now 97 million, 80, I can't do the number in my head. Less than 100, but almost $100 million more in property than Rantoul City School. So EAV per pupil, that's the amount of property per student. So here are our comparison districts. All right, yellow districts are, I used these last year in a presentation. These are the other K-8 districts that are close by us. Armstrong Ellis Elementary District has $609,000 in EAV per pupil compared to Rantoul City Schools that has $63,425 per pupil. There's a huge amount of property wealth, okay? But it's within our district that it's this low. These blue ones, remember earlier I talked about the comparable schools, Carbondale, East Moline, Mount Vernon, Streeter, Belleville. Those all are lower than our neighboring districts, but they're significantly higher. RTHS's EAV per pupil is 280,000. If they were on the list, they would be third on the list. Okay, so what does Armstrong Ellis have, by the way, that nobody else does?
Windmills.
Windmills. Okay, we'd love to get some windmills in Rantoul. I don't know where they're gonna put them, but no, they're not gonna go on the base. Okay. But Armstrong Ellis has windmills, has a huge amount of property value out there, okay? Now, can we just tax as much as we want? So, no, I'll tell you what though, in some parts of the state you can, okay? But not in Champaign County. So why not? We are in a PTEL county. A PTEL is the Property Tax Extension Limitation Law. It's commonly referred to as tax caps. Okay, that's not really what it is, but that's a good way to, it helps to think about it that way. We are able to increase taxes on the prior year's property, that EAV, by CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, or 5%, whichever is less. We cannot, from year to year, ever increase our property taxes by more than 5%. So the CPI that we're going to use tonight in our numbers is the amount that we are able to increase what we collect in taxes this year is 1.4%. Okay, that's below the rate of inflation. All right, that's the average property value increase in Rantoul City Schools was 3.4%. So your homes and your properties are increasing at a rate much faster than we're taxing it, which is the intent of the PTEL law. Okay? But there are counties that aren't under property tax caps. They can just tax what they want. Okay, there are some limits, but 2020 CPI is 1.4%. But the estimated increase in property value is 3.4%. So the way to example this is last year we collected in local property taxes $5.344 million in taxes. The most we can increase this year is 1.4%. So we would go from 5.344 to 5.430. That is not, I think that's about $70,000. Okay. So when we're talking about increasing taxes, it's not a huge amount. Okay. I know people at the table will disagree with me on that topic, but nearly every year, the value of your home increases by a percentage much higher than the percentage increase in property taxes. Is new property the same as existing property? So I told you all that stuff about CPI and PTEL. That only applies to existing property. So Mr. Brotherton's lived in his house a long time, I bet. Okay, it's not new property. It can only go up by that 1.4% year to year to year, or whatever it is. So no, PTEL, the limited, so is new property the same as existing property? No. The PTEL, the tax limit, only applies to existing property that's on the books. New property is taxed at a one-time maximum rate. And every year after the first year of taxation, the PTEL rules apply. So this year, the amount of new property coming onto the books in Rantoul City Schools is about $255,000. That's how much was either in someone does an addition to their home or builds a new home, or that's new property, or a new business is built, if it's not in a TIF. Okay. Every school district in Illinois, typically, every taxing authority in Illinois applies the maximum rate to new property. I don't know of any taxing body that doesn't apply the full rate when new property comes on the books. When Armstrong Ellis got windmills, I guarantee you they taxed it as much as they could, which wasn't a huge tax rate, but they did the full amount. Okay? So let's look at new property history in Rantoul City Schools. I'm going to look at tax year 2019. I want you to pay attention to the dates up here. April 9th, 2020. So we get the total EAV, all of the property in Rantoul in 2019 was $140 million. We're allowed to set our tax rate based on this, what's called the rate setting EAV, which is $108 million. That year, there was $3.1 million in new property. That was a good year. I don't know what happened that year, but that was a good year. Now, of that $140 million, $31 million of it is in a TIF. Or there's actually 4 TIFs in Rantoul. I'll explain what a TIF is in a minute. But we based our tax extension, the levy that we did, based on these numbers. Okay? 6 days later, we got new numbers. Right? 6 days later, we were told that now our rate setting EAV has gone up by $16 million. Okay? That's 16 days later. So what happened? in there. Now, the main differences, look here at the TIF line. Okay, the recovered TIF. Then the next year, we go up, we're back to normal. We have $206,000 in new property. The next year, $255,000 in new property. But you see the TIF adjustment happened here. And then the TIFs are growing and we're not taxing that money. So what happened in 2019? Well, TIF 1 happened. TIF 1 is Chinook Air Force Base. In 1996, the village of Rantoul set up a TIF district for economic redevelopment. So what happened to us, though, Rantoul City Schools? RCS proceeded with its tax levy with information provided by the county clerk that indicated an estimated new property of only $3.1 million. Again, that in a normal year, we'd be ecstatic about that. That's a huge increase in new property. Okay, so we proceeded with our levy based on that information. We were doing this in November of 2018. Okay. The information we had as late as April 19th, 2020 was consistent with the earlier estimates from the county clerk's office. Okay. 6 days later, we received new information from the clerk's office that there was an additional $15.1 million in new property. This was from TIF 1. So, folks, this was our windmills. This was the windmills for Rantoul City Schools. All right? And we didn't know there were windmills, is what this comes down to. At the time, RCS believed that this was solely an error in the county clerk's office, and we believed that we could not fix the problem at the time. It was too late for us to change our levy, okay, because we were doing that in November of 2018, and now we're in April. It's due someday in Thursday, something in December.
December 28th.
December, what is it?
28th.
December 28th is when it's due this year. So again, what happened? Well, what's the TIF? The TIF is a tax increment finance district, which is established by a municipality for the purpose of community development. While a TIF is in effect, the school districts do not collect taxes on that TIF. It is not taxable property for 23 years. While a TIF is in effect, the municipality is required to meet with taxing authorities annually to review the TIF. In order for a TIF to expire after the 23 years, the municipality must notify the school district and pass an ordinance dissolving the TIF. For 23 years, again, I think I've said that a couple times now, RCS did not collect any taxes in TIF 1. RCS has no evidence that the municipality was meeting with us annually to review the TIF. RCS has no evidence that the municipality passed an ordinance dissolving TIF 1 or notifying RCS that TIF 1 was dissolved. Formal notification of the dissolution of TIF 1 with an ordinance formalizing the dissolution would have notified RCS that there was an additional $15 million in new taxable property. So there was more than a 14% increase in our local EAV that if this is a once in a generation kind of EAV increase. As I said, this is the wind farm that we're not going to get because we're landlocked and we can't have windmills, okay? But this was a 14% increase in our local EAV. RCS at that time, because of that, lost more than $700,000 in new revenue that would have been applied to the property in that TIF. We lost it a second year, which was last year. We're going to lose it every year moving forward, $700,000 less to our school district. So far it's been $1.4 million. Additionally, there was a benefit to this to our local taxpayers. Because of this error, wherever the error resides, because of that error, there was a 50-cent tax rate cut, more or less, as a result of the error. So a typical homeowner saw a tax cut. Maybe you remember it, okay? So what needs to happen now, and this is the tricky part that I'm asking the board about, and the board is somewhat aware of this already. Based on our legal guidance from our attorney, RCS must extend our levy to the $15 million of TIF 1, assuming it's new property, because the village has not yet dissolved TIF 1. If the county clerk is able to extend the levy to this $15 million as new property, RCS will see an approximate $700,000 in new revenue in the first taxing cycle. And we would continue to get that revenue every year thereafter. I said that. If this large levy increase goes into effect, a typical homeowner will see an increase in taxes similar, but actually less than the decrease in taxes received 2 years ago. I'm going to put this on a little chart for you so you can see this in a minute. So if we do a tax increase, could the board offset this tax increase that goes to local taxpayers? So yes, there are two things. So if the county clerk was able to extend the levy to TIF 1, what could RCS, what could this board do to minimize the effect of that tax increase on homeowners? Okay, there's a couple things we could do. One is the board could choose to rebate part or all of the tax increase to reduce the initial impact of these taxes seen by a homeowner. So we could consider rebating it and then phasing that tax increase in over time so that it is not as large of a one-time increase. But when you see the amount of money we're talking about to a typical homeowner, I think that's important. The other thing is the board could choose to pursue what's a property tax abatement grant. If we were able to get this property tax abatement grant, we could potentially shift about $700,000 of local property taxes to the state. The gamble there is the state always going to pay that money? Okay. That's always a gamble, but that's an option that the board would have to offset that tax increase. So why significantly increase the levy? For 23 years, Rantoul City Schools did not directly benefit from the growth in TIF 1. An additional stable revenue of $700,000 annually will significantly strengthen the financial health of our district, significantly. Okay. Well, where's my best slide in here? There we go. I'm going to jump to this one, but I think it's important because I kind of hit it home. All right. So what does this look like over time? And so I want to make sure you all see that what we're actually, if we were to actually get what we're talking about right now, you would see a tax rate decrease compared to where we were in 2019. Okay. So in 2018, a home valued at $100,000, and according to Zillow, I know that's not the world's most reliable source, but according to Zillow, the average home price in Rantoul is less than $100,000. Okay, so a home of $100,000 would pay in 2018. That home paid $1,609 in local property taxes. It went down, and this had nothing to do with TIF 1. It went down because we were starting to see property growth. So it went down by $26 the next year. Now is when we see TIF 1 came on the books unexpectedly. A typical homeowner saw a $229 decrease. The next year it went up $5.17. What we are proposing tonight would be $151.73 increase. But I think it's important to note that that increase is still less than where we were in 2019. Okay. So if you look at not year to year, but if you look over multiple years, it's not a net increase. And that would be a one-time bump that you would see. Okay. You're like, oh, there we go. I have it in there. The total tax bill from 2019 to 2022, if the county clerk were to actually extend the levy to TIF 1, it would be a decrease overall of $72.17 per $100,000. I don't know, what's there left to say, Marcellus?
Not a lot, but just to go over the scenarios.
All right.
Uh,
I feel like maybe you're supposed to tell me anyone else, I'm your boss. So I guess on that, before Marcellus goes into the nitty gritty of the detailed fund account, the funds and the levies, what questions are out there? I have a feeling this is gonna be in the newspaper tomorrow. I don't know why, but, are there any questions from the board?
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so before I get into my slides, I'd like to just provide the board with like a timeline, a snapshot of the timeline of what's going to happen from now to April. Tonight, hopefully, we can decide on a levy option and move forward. And if so, at our next board meeting in December, the board would vote to pass that option. Scott and I already have on our calendar December 17th to drive the levy proposal to the county clerk's office to file. All levies are due by December 28th to the county clerk's office. In December, if we choose a levy growth of 5% or more, we are required by law to hold a truth in taxation hearing. Therefore, we will need to have a hearing at the next board meeting before the board would approve the levy. Also, we will need to post a notice in the newspaper no more than 14 days and no less than 7 days prior to that the date of the hearing. Okay, so that kind of finalizes things for the year. January, February is normally the months where we are completing appeals. Appeals are property owners that are requesting a reduction in their property value, and those appeals are typically done by February. In March and April, we will receive our finalized computation reports from the county clerk's office. And that's where Scott will say, all right, great, this is the EAV, this is our tax extension, which basically a tax extension, and I may use this, is the amount of money that you're going to receive, the tax dollars that you're going to receive for the year. This is called a tax extension. So that's what will happen in April. Everything will pretty much be finalized. So getting back to the PowerPoint, the next slides will basically show three options in terms of our tax levy. This first option, and before I get into the data of the first option, one thing to note is this information, where we got the information, Scott and I met with consultant Leo Johnson. And Leo has worked with the district in the past in terms of the levy process. And Leo has a levy calculation spreadsheet that he uses that has formulas built into it. And so what you're seeing on the screen is just the data that goes into that spreadsheet to come up with the computations. So on the left, basically has information, again, that goes into the spreadsheet. You'll see our 2020 EAV was at 126.6 million. Our new rate setting EAV is estimated at 130.9 million. Scott alluded to the new property of 255,000, and you can see the 18.4 million in the TIF increment. And the last part of that is basically our 2020 actual extension, what we got last year, which is the 5,344,000. Well, all that information, what does it mean? It goes into a formula to create what's one important component, which is called the limiting rate. The limiting rate is basically the tax rate. that you're going to see. And this limiting rate with a CPI of 1.4 and an EVA growth of 3.37% comes out to 4.14753%. That would be the tax rate. And so that's that rate basically is multiplied by the estimated rate setting EAV to determine our maximum extension, the maximum amount of tax dollars that we can get, which you will see at the bottom there, 2021 estimated maximum extension would be 5,430,000. So based on this information, the most likely scenario that we will see for our tax extension is really 5,430,000, which is just simply 1.6% higher than what we received last year, which is 5,344,000. So
I think I want to be clear though, because part of all that stuff I was talking about is an assumption that TIF 1 would go on the books. What Marcellus is saying is likely that's not going to go on the books this year. We want it to. There's a lot of moving parts that have to align. So most likely, regardless of what the board approves with what's referred to as a balloon levy, a larger levy, this is most likely what we think would happen.
Exactly.
Is a 1.6% increase.
Right. We can ask for, whatever we would like to ask for, but we're in a tax cap district and we're capped to the formulas. And this is, unless the TIF comes on the books, this is most likely what will happen next year. And our max increase in the total tax dollars that we will get will be 1.6% over last year. So we can move to the next slide.
I was just gonna say, let's look at the options.
All right.
Well, that's option that I'm still on this likely option. The next slide actually just shows, right there. It actually just shows the distributions by fund. Basically what we're going to levy by fund. And you can see there you have your fund name, you've got your prior year extension, you have your next column is your limiting rate extension, and then it would simply be the tax levy. The limiting rate extension and tax levy extension are the same here. That basically that's saying that, we're just going to go with the most likely scenario here, and we're going to ask for exactly what we think that we're going to get based on the CPI and the EAV growth that the county clerk's office has provided. So that's kind of just a snapshot of where the money is going.
I'm going to jump in and clarify. All of our bonds are paid for with sales tax. So they're not paid. We don't levy property taxes to pay for our bonds. And I don't want someone to see this and think we don't care about fire and safety. This is a fund that's pretty well phased out in most districts at this point, and we would address fire and safety issues through other funds. It's just an old thing that's still there. But yeah, we don't use that fund directly anymore.
Okay, so the second scenario is basically saying, instead of the 1.6% increase, we're going to ask for a 4.85% increase. We're still under the threshold of the truth in taxation requirements, but just in case the estimates are a little off, we're going to build some cushion in our request because we can never get more than what we requested, and so we want to make sure we get that right. And so this information is pretty much similar to the information on the last in the likely scenario, but as you can see, in the right column of information at the bottom, the 2021 estimated extension it changes from the likely scenario from 5.4 million 30,000 to 5,603,000. So that change is strictly just increase, a bump up in what we're going to ask for from 1.6% over last year to 4.85% over last year. Doesn't mean that we're going to get it again. If the likely scenario happens, we're capped, and we're going to get is exactly what was displayed in the last slide. But unfortunately, that will impact the tax rate. The limiting rate, you can see, bumps up to 4.28026 instead of the 4.14. And then on the later slides, I'll show you how that relates to a tax dollar increase per $100,000 home.
Not quite. That's
So
the same one.
this is, again, the distribution of the levy by fund. You can see the comparison there. Prior year extension, again, is 5.344 million. The limited rate I put in so you can have a comparison to the bump up versus what we would most likely get. The limited rate extension is, again, 5.430 million. And what we would ask for in terms of just a bump up to ensure that we're covering bases in the event that there's a miscalculation on the EAV would be the 5.6 million.
And so this version we're looking at in a typical year where we're not talking about the TIF is what we would most typically go with, because it's giving everyone a little bit of a buffer, including the clerk's office, as far as where there might be errors. So it's usually about 2% extra, I think, is what you're talking about. Even though you're likely still just going to get this number that's in this column, but it's a fail-safe to do it that way.
Then if we move to the third scenario, now this is the TIF likely. You can see here, instead of the 3.37% increase in EAV growth, we kind of played with it and we increased that to 3.57. So our estimated EAV there is 131,180,000. You can see the recovered TIF is at 15 million. We still have the estimated new property at 255,000. And that the bottom just shows the 2020 actual extension that we received last year. So the right side shows the same information, again, the 1.4%, but you will see if the TIF is recovered, the limiting rate increases to 4.6749, which basically results in that tax extension, what we would receive going from the 5.4 million to the 6,132,000. So that's about a $700,000 increase if the $15 million TIF were to come back on the books. And unfortunately, it would present an increase in the tax rate.
Okay. And go ahead.
And so this slide is basically the distribution, again, by fund. And it's got the limited rate extension. If it were to come back on the books at 6.1 billion, and we would just simply request that amount at 6.1 million. Go to the next slide. This basically shows the calculation in terms of the tax rate. In the likely scenario, you can see the tax rate for 2021 is the 4.14753. Last year's tax rate was 4.21970, and you can see the decrease in the difference. And so We have a formula to convert that to dollars per $100,000 home. And so in the most likely scenario, the taxpayer would see a decrease of $24.06 per $100,000 home.
Okay. So we're almost done.
And this calculation, and that's where we bumped it from 1.6 to 4.85% in terms of growth. It did increase the tax rate to 4.28026, and you can see last year's tax rate, and you can see the increase there, which would result in an increase of $20.19 per $100,000 home. And in the final calculation for the TIF, you can see that the tax rate increases to 4.6749 over last year's 2020 tax rate, which creates an increase of the 0.4552. And if you do the calculation, it results in an increase of 151.73 per $100,000 home, which Scott basically alluded to in this last slide there. And so those are basically the three options that are before you tonight. You got the likely option, you have the better than likely option, and then you have the covering all bases if we want to move forward with the TIF option in the event that it comes, that $15 million comes back on.
So my
I'll turn
recommendation.
it over to you.
Well, you stay there, don't run away. My recommendation is that we do our levy with the hope that TIF 1 would be able to be extended in that levy. But what we're saying all along is what is most likely to happen is that we would be looking at a 1.6% net increase. So even though as a board, I'm asking you to vote for a much higher rate increase, I don't think that's likely to happen right now. If we were to actually come to some type of resolution where TIF 1 could go back on the books and we could extend our levy to that property, I would also, I'll say it now on the record, I would then recommend to the board that we look at using the, I believe it's called the fiscal responsibility law, which would allow us to rebate part of those funds and whatever we would like to phase that back in so that it's not a 1 year $151 increase. We could, we have a lot of discretion as a board on how we would utilize the fiscal responsibility law to alleviate that burden. We could rebate taxes to all taxpayers. We could rebate taxes to only folks who get the homestead exemption. So there's a lot of things we could consider at that point. The other is that piece of the property tax abatement grant with the state, which is a state program to try and lower the overall tax rate, property tax rate in communities like Grand Tool. The risk there that we would have to think through and talk about is if we give up local control over that money, we might not get that money. Okay, so those are considerations. So I know it's a big ask to say. What will be in the newspaper tomorrow, if we had one, is school board looks to increase taxes by 15%. That's the headline, and I know that. But this is about the long-term financial stability and correcting an error and making it right.
Do you know when we'll get an answer on that, if that TIF 1 comes back on the books?
I do not know.
Don't know.
So for it to happen by April is usually kind of like the drop dead time. Right around April 15th is when it is. As I said, a lot of moving parts would have to come together for that. I'm more realistic that we're having a similar conversation this time next year. When we would have a lot more clarity on it, but we did not know what happened last year or 2 years ago. We know now, and that's why the legal guidance is we've got to extend the levy so that we are making, that's our formal step to say to the county clerk, that's new property. And if it's not new property, then it's still in a TIF. Because the village didn't do anything. The village did not vote to terminate the TIF.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? And if not, then we will take Scott's recommendation next month. Or concerns? No, then we'll take your recommendation next month.
The next 3 items are gone, so that will speed up the meeting.
Yep.
All right.
Option number 13.
Option 13?
Or, sorry,
There were 13 options tonight, so.
number 13. All right, Hannah.
So I'm glad Shannon's here. She's our, what's your official title, director?
Yes.
Okay. So a couple meetings ago, we talked about we have the 2 tennis courts here that are Rancho Park District. And we leased the southernmost tennis courts, which are not tennis courts anymore. So if you go look at them, they're a mess. And so we're leasing it from them. We were wanting to do a parking lot. That, I know that's not very glamorous, but as a staff member at Ader for 3 years, it's very hard to park. There is also a lot of congestion on Wabash with drop off and pickup in the mornings because staff park on Wabash right now. So my hope is and what we've talked about behind the scenes, so to speak, is that we would like to, if we're able to somehow efficiently get some additional parking and have it off of Wabash and move that traffic off Wabash. My hope, and the next piece that's hope is the village would work with us to do something with the traffic pattern on Wabash. Because if we could have no staff cars parked out on Wabash, that would give us some more flexibility with parent drop off and pickup. So what am I asking you about here? So we would have to put this out to bid. Our preliminary estimate is $350,000. That would be for the project because it has to go out to bid and because there's architectural and engineering fees. I'm fascinated that there's architectural fees for a parking lot, but I don't think any architect goes to college like, I'm going to design a parking lot. But there are fees in doing this that are probably more engineering fees that are typically 10% of the estimated cost. I don't want the district to go out and spend $35,000 on engineering and preparing a bid if the board isn't willing then to turn around and actually approve a $350,000 project. So I told Jenny and I talked and Shannon with the architect, let's pause it until they have a board meeting and make sure that, I don't want to end up wasting $35,000 if we're not willing to move forward on a parking project. I got one question was, have we looked at having the parking lot go through to Wabash instead of back to Urbana? The concern about that is one of the main reasons to do this is to get traffic off of Wabash. I'm also not sure how we would fit a road in there without losing the current central office parking lot that we have right now. It's certainly something that we can ask the engineer and architect to do, but I don't see that pulling traffic off of Wabash, but I am not an engineer, just a doctor. All right, I'm not a real doctor. I'm trying to add more highlights for the blooper reel later. So this is the map and it's really tiny. So I flipped it and made it bigger, which that might help. That's really far away from me. All right, so I want everyone to make sure they know what they're seeing. So this is Urbana. Is it Urbana Drive or Urbana Avenue?
What is it?
It's Urbana.
That's a
Is that the road that goes back behind the baseball field?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's the road that, The base was right here, right?
Right.
And then, this is all Wabash Park. Our property line is this red line. So Jenny and Shannon, how do we know we can put a road there? Have we asked?
Yes, the park district is,
Okay.
the park board is aware that this was a possibility and they are in full support and
Because the other piece of this is it creates parking for Wabash Park. It's pretty limited parking there. And I think as the sports complex gets used more and more, I would imagine you will see more activities back in Wabash Park.
Yes.
It's been pretty light the last year. You would be coming in off of Urbana, and this is Ader right here. Right now, where you see this kind of grayish area, I don't know what used to be there. I'm sure someone does, but
Bike racks.
Bike racks.
that's a lot of bike racks.
There was a lot of kids that rode bikes to the school.
All right. It's a kind of a concrete blacktop mess right now. So we would be able to put some parking here. I like that they put designated reserved parking at school's discretion. That seems like you putting a parking spot at the superintendent, but no, I don't envision it that way, but there would be parking here and then we would have a flow through. I think they said the lot itself is 54 or is it a total of 54 altogether? Do we know?
54. Total of 54.
Total of 54 altogether. So yeah, what I don't know is what it would look like to take a road through here up to Wabash. I also people just cutting through from Urbana to Wabash. We would have parents doing that for sure if that was accessible. So, I mean, that's what the project is. So we just need to know if, and also I know, I guess what I've learned and all of you, I think, in our first few months together is projects might not come in where we think they're going to on the bid process. So.
I would like to emphasize the safety. I'm out there at 3:00 every day and it is a madhouse. We've got parents parking in our parking lot, trying to flip around so other cars can get in. And the kids are just darting out sometimes between the cars. You don't know they're coming. It's really a safety issue.
And we have met with the village before COVID to talk about traffic flow on Wabash, but that's not a simple or inexpensive solution. Because we've also talked about safe routes to school. I mean, even that grant is going to be way, not nearly enough for a project along Wabash. The grant, that was the other thing. We initially thought we could use the annual state maintenance grant, which is $50,000. We thought we could use it for this as part of the cost. We cannot because ISB considers that new construction. So if it was already a parking lot, would they call it a new construction?
It would be okay if it was already a parking lot.
Couldn't we just tell them it was a parking lot?
I tried to sell it as a big slab.
I got a paint machine, I can go.
Also, I did approach the village, actually, and they might have laughed at me behind the scenes, but see if they had anybody who could pull the fences down for us. And I was told, no, they're busy. So, which they probably are, I believe them. But we did look at things like that I know we've talked about it at board meetings, but I did contact the village and at least 2 departments got back to me with a very polite no.
Well, Scott, you know what my question is gonna be on this, probably, maybe. Since we do not have a newspaper,
Yes.
can we do some work on designating one or multiple people to contact local businesses, companies, telling them that this project's gonna go out to bid. If you would like to bid on this project, here's the process.
Right, so what I learned when this came up the last time is our architectural firm will do that for us. If they will call anyone we provide to
So we
them,
just gotta provide them.
yes, so they will reach out to them. I'd rather have it go that way than our office doing it because I'm gonna trust that they're not calling somebody who's their friend when they make the call, or someone they know on a Friday night.
So if any of you board members have businesses that you want, you need to get that
It's
discussed.
gonna be concrete, asphalt, what?
It'll probably be bid both ways.
Do we
It'll
know?
be bid both ways. I mean,
I think it was asphalt.
yeah.
Okay.
But you'll have a concrete guy that'll put a price in. it'll be spec'd as asphalt, but you'll have concrete companies, somebody like Floyd's will give a bid, but Floyd's is concrete, they don't do asphalt, or someone like Cross will bid asphalt.
Yeah, and this is, I think, gonna be our first formal bid since we've all been together. And that is something we've talked about with the architect, is making more of an effort to, and also being able to document that we've done it, to reach out to other vendors. Because it's in our interest to get as many bids as possible. Also, Andy, I was noticing, this might be too soon to make this joke, but there's gonna be a lot of kids over here.
Where?
Or like on these courts. These are really nice courts right now, and they're gonna hit balls over the fence. We might need something there, but that's the other parks. You might need like a net, some netting.
Oh, yeah. Talk to Donald about that.
Is it too soon to make that joke? All right. But no, I was being serious though. I was thinking about it. We might have.
Pickleball is plastic.
Pickleball's not gonna hurt it. Right?
Pickleball, there is nothing hard that is played on the tennis courts.
Okay.
They're all softball.
All right.
There's plastic pickleball.
Basketball out there.
There's no basketball out there. It's volleyball, pickleball, and tennis.
All right. We'll be good then.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a parking lot for first-year teachers.
No, just down the road.
First year teachers get the pencil.
Whoever has comprehensive insurance.
Showed your insurance card before you said that.
All right.
So Jenny, I believe I asked you, we are leasing this for $1 forever, right? So we not gonna dump the estimate 350,000 and then the city's gonna come back in and say, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's technically the rental park district.
Or the rental park district.
Yeah.
Signed an agreement with.
I mean, if they did, that would just.
So is that written up in the lease agreement that this is from 2021 till
Good
question mark?
question.
I don't know.
Whatever you guys signed.
I will have to refresh my memory. But I think what I'm hearing you say, I was like, can we make sure this is in long term so there's not some risk that the park district were to
Why
take it
spend
back?
$350,000 when the park district could take it back?
Yeah, I know the intent is that it's ours forever, but I don't know why we couldn't update whatever is in that lease agreement to show that.
Because we can't own the property,
Because it's federal ground
because
and,
it's federal
right.
ground, but I'm sure if they would be okay with putting something,
Yeah.
if it's not already, I just.
Government entity getting rid of property is not easy, even when it's government to government, it's not easy. So that's the reason for the lease. If anybody, I'd say I'm in full support of this. If anybody has any more questions or any more comments, I make a motion that we pass the engineering cost and tell direct Scott and his staff to get moving on it. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Before we vote, I think this is just a clarification, so people would be more aware in case they think of this, well, what you're doing all this, spending this money, why? Explain why we could not just use the parking lot that's behind the gymnasium.
It's already full. That's the main thing. And, and it's also, keep in mind, transportation parks their buses back there. All the bus drivers and bus monitors park back there.
I just wanted that to become public.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was a good.
This is going to help alleviate congestion on all sides of school.
We would likely, as the employer, probably have to prohibit our staff from parking on Wabash as much as we can. It's not ours, those aren't our parking spots, but I think our staff would likely comply with that.
Okay.
You know, we don't own those actual parking spots on Wabash.
Go ahead, Anna.
Ready?
Yep.
John Brotherton,
Aye.
Bodo Johnson,
Aye.
Nikki Pettit,
Aye.
Mitch Wilson,
Aye.
Joe Robinson,
Aye.
Tyler Wilson,
Aye.
Andy Graham.
All right.
We don't need any.
Yep.
Informational items. We did have 2 FOIA requests in the last month, and they were pretty simple ones, so they did not incur any significant costs for us. The October, November COVID data, I do want to pull that one up real quick. So this is something that's been in the packet monthly. We have, this is the important part. Oh boy, what did I do?
You flipped it.
I could do that. All right. From from October to November, we had 20 student positive COVID cases in our schools. The previous month, it was 27. So we view that as a decrease, obviously. Close contacts, we were able to start reducing the close contacts. Outside of school, close contacts also went down. Test to stay should say 0. We did not have any students last month under test to stay. But we also had a lot fewer close contacts. I say that is very positive, but in the last 2 days, we have definitely seen all of a sudden, we don't know why jump in our COVID cases. So it'll be interesting to see how this comes out when we have our December meeting. But also, vaccination is on the table for our kiddos. So that's on here too in a minute. Any questions on the COVID data? I've got a question about masks, so I'm just gonna talk about it. I don't have any inside information on masks. If I did, it would probably be in the newspaper. I keep saying I'm optimistic. I was optimistic when we talked about this in July and August also. But I believe that once the vaccine is readily available for our children 5 to 11, and they've had access to the vaccine, that in my mind, my optimistic brain is when mask mandates and some of our close contact requirements will start to go away. I would love to say that's January, but I'm a person who's going to vaccinate my 9-year-old and I still haven't gotten her in yet. So she had a fever for a few days, missed the appointment and all that. But so I'm starting to see that not every parent that even wants to get their kid vaccinated is going to be able to do it that quickly, but by January, hopefully. So I'm optimistic that the masks will go away. I do know that the board received an email solicitation about masking from an attorney. That's kind of I call that kind of a spam situation. We are still really obligated to follow the emergency executive order to protect the liability from the district perspective. We won a STEAM grant. This is pretty exciting. So another grant Jenny won. All right, yay. This one is about 100, I want to say 94,000, maybe 100. It's 94,000 a year for 2 years. And I did put in the board packet what it's being used for, and I feel like highlighting that here. Funding of 2 project-based learning teacher cohorts. This is a professional development group. We're going to fund that. We're going to be funding for books that highlight underrepresented groups in science, materials and supplies for our teachers to implement project-based learning projects, and funding for a Sisters in Science Club at each school to encourage girls to go into math and science careers, and that'll be for the next 2 years. So, yay. Jenny doesn't win every grant she applies for. I do want to, most of them. Speaking of Jenny Frericks, Jenny was recognized last Friday at the Chamber of Commerce banquet as the Rantoul Area Chamber of Commerce Educator of the Year. There was a teacher. Teacher at the high school also won. They gave 2 this year. I cannot remember her name. And Mitch doesn't know.
Karen Hughes.
Karen Hughes. All right. Thank you. So that was exciting. We had other folks nominated from our district. Sam Bean, who's a first grade teacher at Northview. Kelly James, who's a kindergarten teacher at Northview.
Special ed.
Special ed. So I'll show you what I know. Liz Stahl, Phil Dempsey, and Amy T, who are the art, music, and PE teachers at Pleasant Acres, were also nominated. So that was a good time. Mr. Brotherton and Andy and Joe were at the banquet. So nice event, and it was nice. Jenny had to make a speech. They didn't tell her in advance either. So, and I was ready to go home at that point. So we do have a COVID-19 vaccine clinic that we're hosting with OSF tomorrow. It's been harder than heck to get this set up, but I'm grateful they're trying. The times, so if you know littles out there and you're interested in doing it, It's in the boardroom, so we're not doing it during school, and parents have to bring their child in. So it's basically a pop-up clinic that we're hosting 7:30 to 10 in the morning. So that was a request I got from some parents that we need to be before school, and then we need some time after school. So the best thing about, so just because I play by the rules, is once a child is fully vaccinated, they are no longer subject to the same rules of close contact and quarantine. So even if your child is next to a kid in class who has COVID, it's likely that if your child is vaccinated, they will not have to miss school, okay? And that's currently what it is at the junior high with our 7th and 8th graders. There are kids who've been fully vaccinated. They are not subject to the quarantine rules. All right, I'm done. You said we'd be done at 6:45.
No, I didn't.
All right.
Any comments from any of the other board members? Okay, I got just one. Yesterday was Board Member Appreciation Day.
Oh, darn it.
And I want to thank all of you for being on the board. We are new. I hear Mr. Goldstein's complaints. I think that's why all of us are on this board, is we want to see things going up, and sometimes we get distracted by what's going on in the outside world. But our focus needs to be on making lives better for everybody that's in our buildings. And I think we're all gearing towards that. So I thank you guys for all sitting on this board with me. Like I said, we're not always going to agree, and I think I told all you guys that in our first conversations, and that's fine. That's fine, but because we all, sometimes disagreements lead to the best solution. This weekend, we're all going to, or most of us are going to be up at III. So take that time to grow and become a better board member. Go to some sessions that are pertinent to our district. And if you have any good ideas, we'll bring them up with the administration as we go through.
And we'll be up there too. Actually, Jenny, Allison, Marcellus, and I will be up there with the board. The only thing I wanted to add is, yes, of course, I remember yesterday was Board Member Appreciation. Jenny Fredericks again came to the rescue and texted me last night, so I could at least do a Facebook post. I did want to respond to the public comment motto. Public comment, I will follow up with you regarding your public comments.
Okay, thank you.
Probably tomorrow, since it's late. And I'm just going to say, board, there's some difficult things on the table for us to have to make decisions about. That's why we're here. I do appreciate you reading all my emails, listening to comments, sitting through almost 2.5 hour long meetings to talk about it. But, you know, we want to make significant improvements to what we're doing and be respectful of the good work we're already doing. So that's why we've got some difficult decisions on the table, especially regarding how we address the crowding at the elementary schools and how to move forward on our tax rate, which we will vote on the tax rate for sure next week. So.
Okay, without any further ado, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Ms. Pettit with a motion, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Tyler Wilson with a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? All right, thank you, guys. I'll see you, man. Go get some sleep. You got 3 hours right now, man.
Tyler, I really put together.
Told you every night.
The socks, everything.
Hey.